In northwestern Australia, there is a town that the government has literally deleted from official maps and road signs. On paper, Wittenoom no longer exists. It's often compared to the Chernobyl exclusion zone. Being here for too long is a death sentence, and simply taking a breath of the local air can be highly toxic. But unlike Chernobyl, there is no radiation here. The soil, the bushes, and the dust blowing through the streets are contaminated with an invisible, microscopic danger. Wittenoom's destruction was a slow, deliberate poisoning sanctioned by the state, a chemical legacy that turned a regional hub into a vacant wasteland. To understand how this happened, we have to look back to the mid-1930s and 40s. A corporation called CSR established a mining operation here, fully backed by the Western Australian government. They were extracting a highly valuable blue mineral from the nearby gorges. The resulting settlement grew rapidly, drawing 20,000 workers to an outback town, complete with a hospital, a hotel, and schools. To survive the extreme outback heat, the residents came up with a highly practical solution. They took the fine, granular blue tailings left over from the mine and repurposed them to cool down their environment. They spread these blue granules across sidewalks, covered the local schoolyards and playgrounds, paved their roads with it, and even sprayed it directly into their attics as insulation. By building out their infrastructure with the mine's waste, the residents had unknowingly packed their homes and public spaces with a material that would eventually kill them. That valuable blue mineral was asbestos, specifically blue asbestos, the most toxic, lethal variant of the material known to exist. The danger comes when the mineral is broken down and inhaled as dust. Blue asbestos is composed of microscopic, extremely sharp fibers that travel seamlessly down the human airway. These particles permanently lodge deep into the pleura, the tissue surrounding the lungs. They continuously scar the tissue, triggering cellular mutations. This leads to mesothelioma, a fatal cancer that usually appears 20 to 50 years after the fibers first enter the lungs. That massive biological delay functioned as the perfect cover. Throughout the mine's most profitable decades, the deadly consequences of the blue dust remained entirely invisible to the people living in it. But it wasn't invisible to everyone. In 1948, just 1 year after the town was officially established, a flying doctor named Eric Saint inspected the site and immediately noticed the hazardous dust levels. He informed CSR management of the extreme risks and shared his concerns with health officials in Perth, predicting the largest concentration of asbestosis the world had ever seen. 12 years later, in 1960, another physician, Dr. Jim McNulty, diagnosed the town's first case of mesothelioma. Within 5 years, that single case multiplied into over 100 sick workers. Despite receiving this undeniable medical data, CSR kept the residents completely in the dark. The company only shut down the Wittenoom mine in 1966, and strictly because it was no longer turning a profit. The mass poisoning of this town was a direct result of corporate management willfully ignoring the science to maintain their bottom line. By the 1970s and 80s, the biological time bomb inside the residents' lungs finally detonated. Over 2,000 former miners and townspeople began to die, suffering slow, agonizing deaths. The tragedy triggered a massive legal reckoning. CSR faced major lawsuits from former employees, with the courts definitively ruling that the company knew the lethal conditions they were exposing their workers to. While the courts moved against the corporation, the government dragged its feet. They didn't officially urge residents to evacuate until 1978, and it took until 2006 to fully strip Wittenoom of its town status. The final days of the settlement were bizarre. The government literally had to physically escort the last holdouts off their properties in 2022 before they finally bulldozed the remaining infrastructure. By wiping the town from the map and disconnecting the grid, the state effectively buried the evidence of a massive corporate failure that they themselves had heavily subsidized. Today, the houses and the people are gone, but the root cause of the disaster remains completely untouched. CSR left behind 3 million tons of raw asbestos tailings. Those towering mounds have created a 46,000-hectare contamination zone, the largest in the Southern Hemisphere. This ongoing pollution heavily impacts the Benjima people, the indigenous inhabitants of the region. Despite never working the mines, their elders and children continue to develop severe respiratory illnesses from the uncontained dust. They have spent years begging the government to stabilize the site, but officials refuse to act. Safely disposing of the tailings would cost an estimated $100 to $600 million, so the blue dust continues to drift. Wittenoom may have been erased from the map, but the wind blowing through those gorges is still carrying out a death sentence handed down nearly a century ago.